Welcome, everyone. My name is Heather Gallenbeck, and I'm a member of the Kellogg Alumni Relations team. On behalf of the Kellogg School of Management, thank you for joining us. Today's presentation will last 60 minutes. Dean Francesca Cornelli and our distinguished alumnus, David Kohler, will open with the conversation and will address select audience questions throughout the discussion. We encourage you to submit your questions at any time during the program using the Q&A icon located at the bottom of your screen. And finally, this webinar is being recorded and will be made available on Kellogg's YouTube channel next week. With that, I will turn it over to Dean Cornelli to begin our conversation.
Hello, everyone. It's been a pleasure to continue this conversation with distinguished alumni and to tap in the amazing talent we have out there among the Kellogg alumni. And I felt I learned so much about people thrive, and I am delighted today to have another amazing alum, David Kohler. David is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Kohler Companies and is the fourth generation of the Kohler Company to lead the company since of the family to lead the company since 1873. I know you've seen his bio, but it's very impressive to me. He's been working through every manufacturing division on the front lines, and so it's a proper exposure to the entire family firm. And for those of you who are sport experts, he is or interested, he sits on the board of the Green Bay Packers. And for the ones who are instead interested in golf, he served as general chairman for the 2015 PGA Championship at Whistling Straits in Kohler, Wisconsin, and currently is the general chair for the 2020 Ryder Cup. Even I know about the Ryder Cup, and I'm not a golf player, at Whistling Straits, which will be now in September of next year. So it's such a pleasure. I had heard so much about David, and when I met him, he was a typical Kellogg alum, incredibly open, incredibly friendly and warm. So thank you, David, for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Francesca. It's easy to be warm with you. You're a wonderful person, and we're proud to have you lead Kellogg. But it's an honor for me to be here today. I have so many great friends and memories from Kellogg. It really shaped me as a leader, and one of the most transformative experiences in my business career. So, thank you.
Thank you. So I have a series of questions for David, but if you want to also start putting questions in the, I actually already see one in the chat, so that I can weave them in while we talk. But let me start a bit about the pandemic. We are still in it, and we are interested about how it's affected Kohler, right? I mean, the hotel, the spa industry may be affected in one way, but we still need all the bathrooms and kitchens. So what is happening?
Yeah. So I'll give you the background. It's really a tale of two cities. Some of our businesses have had the COVID benefit of incredible demand, and then other businesses have been hit hard. But if you look back at the beginning of the year, our second largest market in the world is China. So we had a great position to see how COVID hit China first and foremost. And then it moved to other markets we're in, like Korea and parts of Asia, eventually to Europe. And it's pretty interesting. You would have thought us here in the US would have been a little bit smarter in seeing it coming to impact the US when it did. And I chalk it up to a little bit of arrogance and ignorance. Because we saw it coming, but I think we were all shocked when it took the stock market down, and we were looking at ourselves in April, not really knowing what was going to happen to the market here in the US and around the world. But it's been an interesting recovery. First of all, in China, it's been very much a V-shaped recovery. That economy has bounced back, and our demand there is very strong in the product business in kitchen and bath. And then here in the US, we've also seen in the kitchen and bath business and our power systems business, very strong demand starting to build in June, July, August, September. And now we're seeing levels of demand that we've never seen, frankly, before, because people are spending more times in their home, and it's been incredible. On the other side, we've seen an impact in our hospitality business. Obviously, we had to shut down here in Kohler at our hotel and golf resorts here early on and furlough people, and then be able to gradually reopen. But we've had some interesting COVID elements happen here as well. We had a hedge fund actually take over the American Club this summer, the full American Club, for 30 days to bring all of their quant interns from around the world for an internship where they could study them and see which ones were a fit for their business going forward. So that was a great piece of unique business. We had to put more bandwidth in the American Club than we have over here on the manufacturing side of the business. So it was pretty interesting. And then we've also seen a resurgence in the interest for golf. There's been a lot of leisure guests wanting to travel and play golf. So that's been positive. But overall, the hospitality business here in Kohler and our business in St. Andrews has been hit hard.
Oh, sorry. Given, like we were talking about different demand and expected, how did you adapt to changing needs, both in the employees or customers? Did you have to pivot?
Yes, so first and foremost, you have to put the safety, obviously, of your associates first, and that was very much front of mind. We from the beginning, we did a number of things. We created this idea of Kohler Strong, and how do we, instead of backing down from this, how do we actually come out of the pandemic stronger, smarter, and faster as a business? What does that look like in terms of our customer relationships, our supply chain performance, our connection with our associates, and our connection with our communities, and actually be more daring in innovation than you might think. So we had that kind of ethos in mind, and we took actually an ex-military, retired military squadron commander and put that individual in charge of our COVID response effort, which was interesting. And we made sure that we didn't overly centrally control our global organization's response to COVID, because you need decentralized leadership in a time of crisis. So we provided tools, techniques, a thought level of what we think people should do in our facilities around the world, but we allowed them to act locally. And I think that really made a difference, having a commander's intent overall, but allowing local action. And then we followed all of the guidelines around the world to make sure that we were putting the best practices to make sure our facilities were safe and resilient, from screening, testing, all the right distancing and mask wearing policies in all of our facilities around the world, and then heavily communicated. We communicated with all of our associates very frequently to make sure that they were very knowledgeable about what was going on in the business. And I think, in general, although we've been very lucky to be in the industry segments that have benefited, we couldn't have been, more pleased with how the business has come through this overall.
That's a great management message on how you deal with the crisis, actually. So let me also ask you, is there any trend due to the pandemic that surprised you, and maybe some that you expect to remain in the long term?
I think it's interesting. After 147 years, our company's been through a lot. We've been through a lot of crises. We've been through 18 recessions, 2 depressions, the global financial crisis, this pandemic recession, and our our company, our DNA is about tenacity, perseverance, work ethic, but also adapting. And we've seen a lot of change. Obviously, the acceleration of the trends that had been in society and how far they've moved forward and so fast. First has been around tech. People always ask me, when things are going to go back to normal. And I say, they're never going back to normal. So many things have fundamentally changed, and technology's driven a lot of that. This experience today, this virtual experience, and how we're working today on Teams and Zoom, that's not going to change for the future. You're going to have quite a bit of that going forward. And also the workplace. I think we've all seen the benefits of more flexible work schedules and remote working. And that's something that's absolutely not going to change. It'll be different levels for different organizations and cultures, but that's going to continue. The wellness trend that our company's been benefiting from has been amazing. People very fixated on everything from hygiene, cleanliness, touchless products, for instance, all the way through calm apps, meditation apps, home fitness, and spa-like activities. So the whole focus on wellness is blown up. And I think that's going to be a mega trend for a while. Obviously, e-commerce and the channels of distribution, that's been accelerated, and that's going to continue. And then the importance of home. I think there's a lot of scar tissue from this in different markets of people sheltering in place. You can see it in their investment in their homes, their emotion toward their homes and second homes. And I don't think that's going to be easily replaced anytime soon. So I think that's going to be an ongoing trend for a while. I think you're on mute, Francesca.
Sorry, I will have to, after so many, I still not learning this. So, no, sorry, I apologize. But so let me I want to move on a bit to family business also, because I have a question about this. I was about to ask you about the strengths and challenges facing family business during this crisis. But there's also here a question about someone who says, I intend to work in my family business post-MBA. Can you please share some of the specific aspects of Kellogg that have benefited you the most in terms of operating and leading a family business? So, both in general and during a crisis, let's say.
That's an interesting point. I think a lot of the things that help lead in a family business are also things that help lead in any business. But certainly one of the most important aspects of Kellogg's teaching methodology and how we work as students at Kellogg is the focus on collaboration. And in any business, it's foundational. It's foundational to my leadership style. And in a family business, you have more stakeholders. It's not just the purity of the shareholders and the typical public stakeholders. You have family stakeholders, some that may be in the business and some that may be outside the business. But that is critically important to build those relationships. And I can't say anything's more important in a family business than the soundness of those family relationships and the quality of that communication and how well you're reaching out to the different generations to make sure that their voices are heard, they're informed, and you can work and building those foundational relationships that will make managing and governing the business much easier if there's strength of trust and relationships. So I think that, just relationship-wise is at the foundation of it. Then all of the things that I learned, technically at Kellogg from different professors, classmates, different things around different subject matter. It's amazing as I look back how many intersections in my life, different things I learned or people I met have influenced decisions later on in my career.
And how do you balance being a family between, as a family, you particularly value the tradition and the legacy of being in such a long-standing company, but then I assume you want to innovate and take risks. How do you manage that?
Yeah, it's interesting. First of all, I think some of the strengths of a family business are that, we were founded by a European immigrant and had this entrepreneurial immigrant mindset that we try to keep resident in the business today. And that's a mindset of, we're going to thrive and survive in any situation and control our destiny and have that resilience. When our company was founded in that first decade in 1873, the founder had to be creative, and he took a horse trough, hog scalder, enameled it, created it with 4 feet, and created our first bathtub. He originally made farm implements and had to pivot and create plumbing products because the economy in the U.S. was so terrible at the time. 60 railroads went out of business in that first decade. So that entrepreneurial spirit is core. And also in a family business, we've benefited by continuity of leadership and principles, which help form the foundation. My father is now executive chairman, has been with the company over 50 years and managed the transition with me. We also benefit as a private company of having a strong foundation of long-term thinking. So we really think about the business like a public company in short-term increments, but also see through that to the long term to make sure we're investing in the business. And as a private company, one of our guiding principles is to reinvest 90% of our earnings back into the business. And that gives us incredible financial strengths. We have no debt right now as a company, very strong balance sheet, and can continue to stay committed to things like R&D and advertising through cycles where other companies might. But the short answer to how do you balance this heritage and this strength with what you have to do to innovate and adapt, I think it's the power of and. You need to do them both. You need to nurture the heritage, the discipline that got you here, and you need to innovate and adapt for the future. That's the only way Kohler's been able to adapt over 147 years. We've had to exit certain segments and businesses and invest more aggressively in new businesses and new markets. For a company that's a market leader in kitchen and bath here in the United States, to also be the #1 market share player in China, took that entrepreneurial pioneering spirit to say, hey, there's a new market that's going to reshape the world 30 years ago. How do we start to plant seeds and invest in that market, build a strong local team in that market that can grow the business with our culture and resources and build the brand? And we've done that. And I think it's only by having that combination of discipline and heritage and principles combined with this never-ending desire to pioneer and grow and build things. And it's that combination that's made us successful, and we can't let that change for the future.
Given that you're talking about China, I'm receiving here several questions about what is your perspective of the US and China relationship going forward, how it will affect your business, your sourcing strategy. A bit of everything here is asking.
Yeah, it's certainly a factor. I mean, it's one of the biggest geopolitical relationships and factors influencing global business, let alone our business, which has market leading positions in both countries. We personally are hopeful that these two very strong leading countries can develop an amicable, constructive working relationship going forward at all levels. Because frankly, the two largest actors on the global stage need to, for the benefit of society and all the global citizens, the better and more constructive and candid and productive these two countries could be together in confronting difficult issues, but working through them, the better it's going to be for everything, from the climate to trade to human rights in all aspects. So we're hopeful that will be the path forward. I think the world needs that. But certainly companies are making all sorts of changes based on the activities and the events of the last 24 months, whether that's supply chain resilience and moving sources to different countries around the world. Things like that are going to likely continue. And this will be an evolving story that continues to unfold over the next months and years ahead. And obviously for the long term.
Yes, thank you. And just going back one more to the family business, yes, I mentioned before that you've been in so many different divisions. Was that a deliberate strategy on the part of your family? And was it important in how you became as a leader of the company?
Looking back, I'm not sure. I was wondering. I think it was deliberate in a sense, but it wasn't deliberate. I think it was the way my father had grown up in the business, and his father had him move around to different positions on the front lines in manufacturing and learn the business. And so I think when I came back to the company before my Kellogg experience and growing up, also working in different positions in the summer and through college, I think he thought that this was an appropriate way to build a foundation. So I did that, and I rotated through different manufacturing areas, working basically on the frontline jobs and learning the jobs. Then I was a foreman in the cast iron foundry. And I also, in that period before Kellogg, worked in business development and in M&A and in materials. And then I went to Kellogg. And, I look back at that experience. It was one of the most beneficial experiences because I learned the work. I learned the technology, the craft of making a variety of different products. I also learned the people and the culture and the incredible work ethic. And that's also shaped me throughout my life, has been how much I've learned from my associates, peers, and people I've worked with at all levels. And I have good friends on the shop floor today, all the way up, obviously, to the C-suite, but people have shaped me at every level. And I think that's also about, being open to that. And that experience afforded that. So life is built on these incredible experiences, and that was one of them.
And there's a question here, how is digitalization impacting your business? Any disruption risk? And what do you have to do to stay competitive?
That's a good question. It's certainly one of the most comprehensive trends and forces impacting our business. And there's not a place in the company where it's not impacting us. So digital transformation is critical in every way we work, and we're investing a lot in it relative to just infrastructure of how we work on the back office to on the front end in terms of e-commerce platforms and our go-to-market strategy, direct to consumer, and how we create incredible experiences for consumers in products and services online and offline in an omni-channel world. So it's foundational. Also, if you look at supply chain, integrated business planning, factory of the future, all of these things driving automation and digitization, it's everywhere. On the go-to-market side, CRM platforms as well, all of these things being integrated. So it is, we spend a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of effort trying to get it right. And I think, as your audience knows, it's not just about implementing systems. It's really refining and simplifying and focusing strategically on how you want to work in the future, and then automating that strategy.
I'm having so many questions. I'm trying to keep up with all
no worries.
Here. So there's actually two questions, which is about attraction of talent. One is, which are related. One is, I assume you do not offer stock options to your employees. If this assumption is right, how does it affect you in offering competitive compensation to your employees compared to your competitors in your sectors? And one later is still, it's kind of like, how do you keep strong managerial talent if by reinvesting 90% of your earning to your business, is it a handicap in relative to people who can compensate through public stock? So it's a bit
Yeah, I think it's, two really good questions. So first and foremost, we don't have publicly traded shares, but we have a form of LTI that we call phantom stock. And basically it mirrors the book value in the business. And we'll do grants of our phantom stock to those key positions in the position. So they have a wealth creation option over time as part of their compensation. And it's very true. Competing against publicly held companies, that is a factor. We have to be competitive in our cash compensation, base and bonus, and then also LTI. And depending on the different industry segments you're competing against, private equity or traditional publicly held companies, the wealth creation component is certainly increasing in a world that's very tapped for talent. So anybody who's in our age group, I would say I'm in my 50s, but 40s and 50s, we're a hot commodity with the experience that we have, and so it is a competitive market. But I think increasingly we're going to have to continue to find those wealth creation options at a number of levels within the business to make sure that we can continue to attract, because it is that competitive around the world. And it's not just the US, it's really every market you're in. There is really a drive, obviously, to build the strongest talent. So we have to be competitive on that front. But I also think people understand that they don't just go to a company for financial reasons. They go to a company because they want to be a part of somebody who's doing, a firm that's doing great things, that's strong ethically, has a purpose, but really a place where they can have a voice, they can have an impact, and they can help shape the company. And I think that's really what we want to create at all levels in the enterprise, is something that's engaging, where if you come to Kohler, you will be a player, you will make an impact, you will have freedom to contribute and innovate and lead and create your own career destiny within the company.
That's a great message. I mean, I have a lot of questions more for Kohler, but let me take a pause a moment. I want to ask you about the sports, because I also see another question here. So first, COVID has massively disrupted, right, the world of professional sports. What near and long-term changes do you see on the horizon in terms of how professional sports are played and enjoyed?
I think there's no doubt about it that the sports industry globally is going through a massive reckoning, and it's not over. It's going to take a while at the college level. There's going to be a rationalization of programs. We've had lots of programs stop this year. Some aren't going to make it. And then also professionally, I think one of the things you're seeing with the different leagues and sports around the world is not all properties are reacting or being impacted the same way. I think certainly marquee teams, franchises in sports or events like the Ryder Cup or like the Masters this weekend, or franchise teams like the Green Bay Packers that are truly unique, waiting list as large as a stadium for tickets. They're going to be much less impacted because they're so unique and different and special. We had to move the Ryder Cup this year because of the pandemic to next year. So we'll actually play the 2020 Ryder Cup next year in the fall, hopefully, here in Wisconsin. But the interest in that event has remained incredibly strong because there's only one of those. It's a rivalry that has great historic meaning and a lot of interest. But I think you're going to find an impact in sports because there is a difference in viewing now. With streaming, you have that impact on viewership of live sports. And you also have younger generations that have different interests in how they want to spend their time versus live sports. So while many of the live sports will continue to be strong, I think others are going to have challenges, particularly those that have very long seasons. I think, capturing and maintaining the interest that they once had will be more of a challenge. So this is going to shake out over a number of years, but it's going to have a very significant impact.
Yes. And there's a question here from actually a classmate of yours, Jeff.
Oh.
And he says, tell us about your experiences being on the board of the Green Bay Packers, since they are the only publicly owned team. What is it like representing a public trust in such an ego-driven environment?
An ego-driven environment. Is that
well, that's what.
No, that's.
I should add the Green Bay Packers are my introduction to the American football. So I have my own Green Bay Packers jersey.
Yeah, Francesca's been to Lambeau Field. She has her own jersey, and we're trying to build her as a fan.
Yes.
So, I think it's interesting. The great thing about the Green Bay Packers is that they aren't about ego. It is a team with incredible respect for their heritage, their roots, the sport, the game. And it's a company that, it's an organization that I would say really is about humility, being humble, but having this iron will to win national championships. And all of the focus is around that. So the board activity is actually just focused on the business of the Green Bay Packer. Those of us that serve on the board and serve on committees, various committees of the Packers, we advise them on how to best run the business of the Green Bay Packers, but they keep us, frankly, out of football operations. And that's one of the beautiful things about the Packers. You don't have an owner who kind of thinks they know how to run a football team controlling the decisions. The football side of the operation is driven by the football executives, and Mark Murphy, the CEO, who obviously has great experience as a player, coach, AD. So that organization makes the football decisions, and that separation is really critical and very unique in a sports franchise or in any business. But I think that's the secret sauce. So it's a great honor to help the Packers and be a part of it. They're also an organization that focuses on building talent from within. So if you look at the heritage, the ethics, the integrity, the talent building strategy, there's a lot of similarities, if you will, to our company as a private company.
I have one more question about the sport. What is the synergy between golf and the rest of the business?
It's a good question. So actually, I think our hospitality business is developed a lot of synergy. It wasn't by design. We had this building across the street here that was a dormitory for immigrant workers called the American Club, that was built in 1918 by Walter Kohler. And my father, it was no longer being used in the 70s. And my father had to come up with an idea of how to use this beautiful old building. And he had this crazy idea. He had to go back to the board 3 times to convince them to create a 5-diamond hotel in this little town, nowhere, Wisconsin. And, the board basically laughed and said, okay, let's let the kid do what he wants and make a mistake, and he'll learn from it. And it's a great story of if you build it, they will come. And they built this hotel across the street, and people came here and they said they wanted to golf. And my father knew nothing about golf, but he had a head of business development who was a scratch golfer. And together they found Pete Dye. And Pete Dye and my father are 2 characters, 2 creators. They believed in design. And my father learned the game of golf through the eyes of Pete Dye and through designing these golf courses. They built one and it filled up immediately. Then they built another 9 and then another 9. And it was done like the game of golf. And my father would say, it's not a great vision that this happened, but we hit a shot and we went to the ball and we took a look at the surroundings and we hit the next shot. And that's how the hospitality business was built. It was built incrementally, 1 piece at a time. And as demand increases, they took the next step. But it was all done within the context of our principles on a single level of quality and truly creating unique and different things to the marketplace. We never want to copy. We always want to create unique and different experiences. So that experience you'll have on Whistling Straits should be as rich and different and wonderful a brand experience as using any one of our products. And I very much credit Herb, my father, and Pete Dye for doing that. They created this incredible legacy. I mean, Wisconsin is now a destination for golf, and we're having the Ryder Cup. We've had 6 majors, and this would never have happened without that pioneering spirit to build something very unique.
That's very interesting. And talking about these things, I see now a question that asks, it's a bit about the leadership. In light of the shift to more employees working from home and across the world, how do you plan to ensure that the Kohler culture remains strong and rooted in the small town values upon which the company was built?
No, it's a good question. I think there's some of those small town values that transcend everything that we want. The realness, the authenticity, the caring about community and the purpose. But we also have to all realize that we're global citizens and we're part of a much bigger environment. So we have to understand diversity, equity, and inclusion. I mean, Kohler is in this surrounding area is a very white place. It's not a very diverse place. And it wouldn't lead to progressive thinking on building diverse organizations. And so we have to transcend those things and make sure we're building the richest, strongest global culture that has the same values around the world in terms of ownership and accountability, inspiring people, delighting customers, innovating and boldly innovating at all levels. So that's really our emphasis overall, is how do we build shared cultural values in all of our businesses around the world. And I think the great thing is that if you go to India or some of our remote markets like China or India, across Asia and different markets, you'll see the passion and drive and cultural values, the same ones you'll see here, stronger than ever, and you'll see that entrepreneurial spirit.
And given that you talked about diversity inclusion, I have another question here saying, of the diversity inclusion programs that you have at Kohler, which do you see as really helping improve the company and have a bottom line impact?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say we're still somewhat early days. This year was a cathartic experience for us, obviously, with the events that happened in this nation. And we brought in a senior leader to consult with me and be our chief diversity, equity, inclusion officer from a temporary contract basis until we better fortified that position. And she had a tremendous background with the military, as well as in industry. And she's helped us reshape our strategy forward. But if I were to say, what are the big rocks going forward? First and foremost, there has to be, ownership, not only at the top level, but throughout the organization. There has to be measurement, and there has to be accountability. So we're creating leadership development committees in every one of the businesses that can develop the leadership and the diversity within those businesses. We will have accountability reviews with myself. And then we're really focused on metrics to mirror the diversity that we have nationally and then regionally in our businesses to make sure we have diverse representation. So I would think, that's kind of the most important. And then also making sure we're teaching, training, and holding management accountable for inclusive behaviors. You have to make sure that the accountability starts from within. If we hire diverse talent, but we put them into a culture that is not prepared to leverage and maximize the talents of everyone, then we're not doing anyone service and we're not doing the right thing. So it's those things first. And then we're going to do much more work working with minority suppliers and more outreach in the community and the trade partners that we have.
And talking about that and also your vision as a leader, actually there are several questions here about how did Kellogg help you discover your leadership style, and what advice do you have for younger students looking to hone their leadership style? I see them throughout these questions.
Yeah. Kellogg was just, as I said before, it was an amazing experience. This is not a paid political announcement, but it really was. The friendships I made, the classes I took, and some of the professors that I had the opportunity to have had an amazing impact. As I said before, collaboration was at the core, and that built my leadership style. I believe very much in Jim Collins' level 5 leadership, humility and will. And I think if you look at how I lead, it's around that by example of building a strong organization of people and talent. My role and our role is to maximize the potential of every associate at Kohler. And if we do that, we'll maximize the strength of the enterprise. Character is also foundational. I think, at Kellogg, you talk about ethics and character determines destiny. These are important things. And then, I would say the connections that I made at Kellogg, my relationships at Kellogg led me to join a board of directors, to interface, which is a great sustainable company, which shaped our sustainability strategy. That wouldn't have happened without one of my classmates, Chris Kennedy, bringing me on that board. So all of these things together. But if I were to give advice, I want to make sure anybody who's going to Kellogg is already in a credible position to succeed, and probably a pretty incredible person in their own right. I would just say, the point on character is important, the importance of family and personal strengths too. My decision to marry my wife, Nina, most important decision you'll ever make are the personal choices of people around you. They either bring you up or do the opposite. And then investing in yourself, as Warren Buffett talks about, the most important investment you can make is in your own development and growth. And I really think that's important lifelong. We think that, leaders are learners and they're readers, and they're constantly growing and improving themselves. And just finally, I would say something that I've had to learn, the hard knocks sometimes, is reality-based leadership. It's so important to be candid and confront reality. Sometimes we don't want to deal with reality. We want to ignore reality, but you have to have the backbone and the candor and the courage to confront reality and deal with it.
You speak as a true Kellogg alum. That's why I like it. I have a question here. You touched a little bit at the beginning. On whom do you rely for management advice or input? Are there non-family members, non-company people you seek out?
Yeah, throughout my life, actually, I've benefited from non-company mentors. Some of those Kellogg alum that I've worked with, and some not. But mentors throughout my life, typically, not always older, some, younger or peers. But I've found great value in having those sounding boards and other opinions to get coaching and counsel, and they've really helped shape me. So in addition to family members, outside mentors have been very important.
And talking also more in general, I want to bring also a bit towards the social impact, because I see several questions. But before we get to that, Wisconsin has been particularly hard hit by COVID. What has Kohler done to help the local community and also in general, right? What do you feel? You talked about, also the backbone. How do you see a role of company in helping support society in times of crisis?
Yeah. No, I think it's a great question. The short answer is that, all companies need to model and lead and understand their civic duty. And we need moral and civic leadership right now. And so we need to rise up and lead. And we've done that when the governor of the state of Wisconsin has been very stressed and challenged with the spread of the virus in the state. He's reached out to business leaders and gotten us on calls frequently, getting our opinion, understanding how we can help in terms of communicating safe practices to our own associate base. And then after the last call, we actually worked with the state and other companies and health providers to actually put billboards out in the community about safe conduct during COVID. So those have been important. We also have worked on associate relief efforts with our associates to provide funds to those who need it, making sure food banks have plenty of funds and food. We actually early on used our supply chain around the world. We could access PPE, personal protective equipment, very quickly and cost effectively. So we actually helped supply the medical institutions in China and here in different markets around the world with PPE that they needed. And we actually, our UK operation tooled up with another company in the UK, ventilators. So we got into the ventilator production. At the time they finished testing the ventilators, the UK didn't need the ventilators, but we tooled up ventilators. And then we also engaged in making face masks in different facilities around the world. So basically everything we can do, at the grassroots level to the bigger strategic level, how can enterprises engage their teams to serve the cause? And nothing creates more motivation too than companies that drive that and do that as well.
I agree. And going from the crisis also in general in the future, especially younger individuals, younger people are just so concerned about the environment and they want to work for a company that takes care of people and surrounding. So can you talk a bit about your approach to social impact and the environment?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And my sister Laura is our Senior Vice President of Human Resources and Stewardship and Sustainability. And she and our team together really drive our focus on this. And it's interesting when you talk about attracting young people, about 88% of millennials say they expect companies and want to work with companies that have a positive impact on society and the environment. So it's very congruent with how these businesses attract talent as well. But we're doing it on a number of levels. We're doing it at the local facility level, engaging our associates in stewardship and local activities. And then we're also through our foundation and national levels in the different businesses we have, engaging in stewardship, community give back in all of our markets. On the sustainability side, we've always been a good environmental steward, but in 2007, we realized we had to reset and do a better job leading by example with all of the issues on climate change and scarcity around the world. We wanted to help teach other companies how we can be better in leading by example. And taking a page out of the Interface playbook, we created a net zero by 2035 strategy to show that you can be a capitalist, but you can also be an environmentalist and drive a strategy that is a triple bottom line. It's a win for the associates, the company, and the environment. And I think we've done that. Since that time, we've reduced our environmental footprint over 25%. We also have a key part of that, which is driving innovation. We want to drive more environmentally friendly, innovative products like water conserving products or lower emission engines and generators, things like that. And those businesses have created over $1 billion annually in new growth platforms for us as a company. And then finally, we created this program called Innovation for Good. How do we use the talents of our people in Kohler and our resources to develop new technologies to solve some of the world's toughest problems. We've worked with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and we've done different work to create clean water, water purification systems like Kohler Clarity. We've also created relief trailers for areas that have disaster relief. And we actually just sent one of these trailers to the Javits Center when they threw up their field hospital. Now the trailer's on the West Coast serving the fire-ridden areas. And then one of the other ideas that they came up with in the Innovation for Good, which involves over 200 associates a year submitting Shark Tank ideas, and then we invested them. They created the idea of Waste Lab, where we use waste streams to actually create new products and new beautiful tiles, for instance, using ceramic waste. So there's a lot of neat things that come out of all of our work around stewardship and sustainability.
And related to that, there's a question, how do you see climate change impacting your manufacturing, distribution, and product line innovation? In part you covered, but this is a bit more specific.
Yeah, climate change is impacting us all, and just on the manufacturing side, certainly regulations are going to get more stringent. Raw material inputs and inputs in energy and water and raw materials, depending on where they are going to get more costly as well. So all of these things are going to impact your manufacturing costs. And so getting ahead of that and driving new materials, greater efficiency, lower footprint operations is going to help you get ahead of the curve in managing your cost and exposure to those forces. We also, on the product side, are facing regulations in water consumption or different emission categories in our power business. And so you have to get ahead of it and drive innovation on the product side as well. So these things are all congruent because they're kind of morally right and right in terms of impacting the environment, but also required and also needed and demanded by consumers and markets around the world. So it all kind of flows together.
I have to see a question here. Have you ever faced an ethical dilemma, probably during the pandemic, and how did you go about it? I don't know if you can think of it on the spot.
Well, I think in a large enterprise, ethics issues come up all the time, whether it's violations that come up or if we're confronted with choices, and we always want every associate in the company to first make the right, morally right, ethically right, legally right decision. And I think that's one of the great things about our company. Certainly in a company with over 35,000 associates, you're going to have people that act outside bounds here and there. But in terms of a company ethos, nothing is ever put above doing the right thing from a moral, legal, and ethical standpoint. So that really guides us in our decision making. But certainly as we look at keeping facilities open during COVID as an essential industry, you're asking people to work in tighter confines in manufacturing facilities. You have got to make sure that you're doing everything possible to support the health of those associates, from personal protective equipment, from spacing to keeping COVID out of the facilities. And, fortunately, because of scanning and temperature scanning and different methods in our facilities, we've largely kept COVID out of our facilities and have had no spread in our facilities. Only 1% of COVID cases in our company have come from internal spread in a facility. The issue is, people outside of work and their activities are bringing COVID into the workplace. But certainly ethically, we want to make sure all of our facilities are safe and secure.
So I'm becoming resigned that I will definitely not be able to ask you all the questions because I still have so many. But let me see one that just came in. It says, how do you see, this is going back to a bit to your business. How do you see the coming of big tech into Kohler's business areas as home is already big area, as home is already big and big area into which everyone is heading into? Do you see partnerships or will you compete head on?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. Partnerships, absolutely. You know, we have some today, and we're going to compete head on. You know, the biggest threats to our business today are likely not the industry incumbents today. Innovation seldom comes from industry incumbents. Now, we fight that every day. But, you know, innovation and disruption comes from those looking at sleepy industries from the outside. So that's where it's going to come from. So the way we have to combat that is by keeping our engine of advanced development and innovation and partnerships going. And smart home, intelligent products, connected products are certainly a key element of growth in our business. Intelligent toilets, one of my favorite categories. We just launched NUMI 2.0 this year, one of the most advanced products we've ever done. Voice control, you can use Amazon Alexa to control this toilet. It's fully touchless and automatic, but just examples of products that are moving in that tech direction. So it's a strategy with multiple facets, from partnerships to internal development, you know, and potential different types of technology acquisitions in that spectrum over time.
Well, I'm afraid that we are really running out of time. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to apologize to all the questions I didn't touch. They were, you know, you generated so much interest, but I really want to thank you for joining us today. It was a pleasure. And, you know, to me, it's such a pleasure because every time I talk to alumni of Kellogg, there is a common thread in thinking deeply about what you're doing, what your goal, and how you do it, and why, which really makes Kellogg special. So thank you, David, for coming and talking to all our alumni. Thank you to all the alumni for listening. Next month, we have Bernard Dalle, who's a partner at Index Ventures and Innovation. And thank you, everybody, and be safe. Thank you. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Francesca. Cheers.
Cheers.